Well, greetings to you beautiful people all over planet Earth. You know that I'm in it, and I have been busy. It's that time of the year where, obviously, some of you know that I'm studying, and I've had some major mid-semester assessments come up, and I have been working on an essay to do with my causal relationships. And that is basically the unions, the symbiosis between fungi or fungi. I don't pronounce it as fungi. I've always said fungi. And plants, mainly plants, but with animals as well, and other living organisms. And I guess, you know, in many ways, my causal relationships are what we are all striving for too. And it's that perfect, flawless symbiosis, either with ourselves or with others. And I feel like this, well, I know from obviously doing my own research with my causal relationships, is that without them, we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be able to exist without these types of very special relationships. So basically, in a nutshell, I'll give you the scientific meaning of my causal relationships. And then I've put my own spin on it, talking to you guys about these kinds of relationships. So basically, my causal relationship or union between fungi and plant is that plants, for the most part, are unable to get all the nutrients that they need. And so fungi, basically a type of fungi such as mycelium. Perhaps some of you have heard about mycelium. And what happens is this type of fungus, not just mycelium, but there are thousands. But this type of fungus will grow on this plant as a host plant, and they form a beneficial relationship of symbiosis. So, you know, with the fungi living on the plant, the fungi is able to stretch its hyphae out. So basically its tree-like structures, they're called filaments, stretch their hyphae out and absorb nutrients and trace elements, breaking down rocks and things that plants can't do. Maximum absorption of water, and then the plant sucks that up. And in return, the plant provides fungus with sugars, carbons that fungus cannot receive because fungus cannot produce photosynthesis. So the plant does it for the fungus, and so there is this mutualism. In science we call it mutualism, and there is a mutual beneficial relationship. And for the most part, nature, or we could learn from this, having these beautiful symbiotic relationships. Now, that's not to say that all my causal relationships are mutualistic, but my causal relationships represent these flawless symbiotic packs, because there's obviously other types of relationships, very competitive relationships, predation relationships, where fungus becomes pathogenic and benefits from the destruction and the deterioration or the death of a plant. And so they are more parasitic in nature. So in many respects, this is kind of mirrored in our society as human beings. Us having relationships with one another that, you know, can either be highly beneficial and beautiful and balanced and symbiotic, or they can be detrimental, parasitic in nature. And it is at a time like this where our energies are changing, they're morphing and becoming more refined, where we need to be more discernful of who we spend time with, who we allow in our space, what it is that we want in our life, and who we want to be around. Who do we want to share these experiences with? Yeah. There is huge energy. There is a wave, a galactic wave coming from the center of our galaxy, and it is shifting and fusing and melting, transmutating through star bodies and planets, and eventually it's going to hit the Earth, and it is going to transmutate everything upon the planet. And this is basically the change, the pivotal tipping point where the planet has finally tipped, towards more fourth, fifth dimensional, more so fifth dimensional, and our frequency changes. So if we have not done the homework, if we have not listened to our intuition, if we have not created, or at least started to create that world, that reality that we want, not what everybody else is living, what we want, we are going to be feeling the effects of this. I mean, we're going to be feeling the effects of this anyway, but we want to be at the right place at the right time when this change happens, because it is inevitable. And it's at these times, this coming wave, this coming refinement, where our galactic brothers and sisters will be publicly walking amongst us. I mean, obviously they're already doing it now, but they're not going to be openly saying, hey, we are from Arcturus, or we're from Procyon, and how are you today? It's not going to be like that. Although there have been isolated cases where they have obviously come to us publicly, me included, and they do share in isolated situations, but the planet is going to drastically change. And I have felt like this for years upon years now. And that low-level sense of urgency for me to get to Australia, to find land, to find my place, has never, ever been stronger. And ever since I got back from Mongolia, from, traveling, that has been my main objective. I came back to South Australia. I felt the pull to go to the Daintree. I did that. I bought some land. I figured at that moment, and I had to find out for myself, that that was not the place for me to be. Although it looks picture perfect on a postcard, and believe me, it is, besides the bugs and the mosquitoes and the constant humidity. And actually, talking about my causal relationships, the Daintree rainforest is an absolute carpet of these relationships. It's this symbiosis and these mycorrhizal networks, mycelium networks under the earth that connect all these trees and feed all these trees and nurture all this life. It's a huge network there, but it's wild. And if you are not from that environment, it is very hard to live, especially if you live in a tent like I did. Mother Nature is a force to reckon with in rainforests, and you have to be made really aware and really prepared to live in a place like that. And I'm from the desert. My blood is hot, and I like dryness. I like feeling my hair dry when it's dry. My hair, for example, was constantly wet in the Daintree, never ever dry. My legs, my arms were ulcerated. I had cavities in my legs and arms from where these tiny minuscule bugs called midges would bite me. And although I knew after they had bitten me not to touch them, it was when I slept and I woke up finding myself just grating my skin with my fingers until I bled, because the itch was just, anybody knows, you know, I mean, a mosquito bite is bad, but a midgie is unbelievable. And I had cavities on my legs and my arms, more so my legs. I had splotches of mold on my bed sheets that just turned up overnight. You know, these huge, I've never seen mold so big in my life. So these spores of fungi had, you know, come through the tiny holes of, you know, my tent, and, you know, they started their whole symbiotic process again. So with or without me there, Mother Nature, she didn't care, and she was going to continue on with what she did. And it was very difficult to live there, constantly wet, sweating, trying to work and hold a shovel, and your fingers are so wet with sweat and water, because it's not even really sweat, it's just being so damp, so humid that you can't hold anything. And so I was partially naked most of the time. So I worked out at that point the Daintree was not for me. I am not proud enough to say when something, you know, wasn't going to work. But the universe has a wonderful way, in the way that, you know, things work. And I've always been intuitive. And so I bought this place on intuition, and I managed to make profit from selling that place. That money enabled me to publish my book. And had it not been for me being up there, I wouldn't be able to publish Eyes of the Scarlet Rose. So I came back to South Australia. It was lovely and dry again. And I was so happy to be back in weather where there weren't midges and not too many mosquitoes. And then, of course, I bought Elnor. And also at that time, as much as I loved Elnor, it still didn't feel like home. But I lived it, and I put my heart and soul into that place for, 3.5 years, and then I sold that. And at the time, I mean, first of all, that whole story of selling Elnor, nobody thought I would get the price I wanted, and nobody thought it would ever sell as quick as what it did. And at the time, now this is how the universe works, at the time where I was born, for the first time ever in history up there, property was being listed by the government for people interested in purchasing property. It has never, ever been publicly listed. Property's never, ever been publicly listed. It's always been owned by the government, crown land. First time ever. And I remember dreaming, even back in 2008, when I came back from Dubai, wanting to have my own place. So for the first time, the government was listing these properties. Now, rewind a year before, started having dreams of being back at one certain property in this area. Didn't put the dots together at that point, but with the speed of the selling of Elnor, and in conjunction with this property, these properties coming up for sale, I just thought, oh my God, imagine if my property sold an Elnor, I could actually buy something. Well, turns out that's exactly what's happened. I sold Elnor within a few weeks of listing it, and I got exactly the price I wanted for it. And everyone was blown away by that, especially the agent. And I laugh, and I have said this before, how in the back of my mind I just think, You people have no idea what I do for a living. Obviously, my family knows, but it's not common knowledge with, you know, obviously people you do business with. But anyway, the timing of the selling of that place and then the listing of this other property was uncanny, and I wanted that property. Had no idea how much competition was involved with buying this property until I had bought it. So I went through the whole process like everybody else, and I was successful with my application and I was offered the property. So I now am moving up to the desert at that place where I had these premonitive dreams of me being there. And it just shows you that sometimes the universe has a roundabout way of revealing to you and putting you where you need to be at the right time. And you may have to go up here and then back down here and then over this way and then back that way. To anybody else, they would look at it, oh, I didn't choose right, or I didn't do this right. I did everything according to my intuition, because had it not been for the timing of everything that I bought and sold or did in these last few years, nothing would have lined up for the moment of me purchasing the place, my ultimate place in the desert. So everything lined up flawlessly. And so this is why I say, don't ever second guess your intuition, because there's so much unseen network behind what's going on that we have no idea about. But trusting that feeling, that intuition, like the moment of when I knew I wanted to sell Elnor, I felt it and I called my parents and I said, look, this is what I want to do. And I was met with so much resistance from them. They didn't understand it and they couldn't understand it. And it was so frustrating to try and explain to them, this is what I wanted to do. They don't understand the laws of the way the universe works. But I had to go with it, no matter how disrupting it was to move and pack everything up. That's right, Venus. You know, like it's a real pain in the ass for most people, right? But I trusted it. And everything was flawless with that timing. So, and now, fast forward, I now have the property of my dreams. And there's nowhere else on the planet that I would rather be back in the desert. It's where my heart sings just unbelievably. And I look forward to what is to come and imprint my energy into that point of the planet. And so when things go down, because they will, maybe not in 5 years, maybe not in 10, but at that moment when, I mean, could you even imagine beings from another world just casually walking or visiting amongst us? It's just a crazy thought, right? But let's just say in 25 to 30 years, this happens. This happens. It's been confirmed, you know, it's public knowledge. They're here, they're visiting. Let's just say it happens and they come. And they want to talk. They want to commune. They want to integrate and mingle. I want to be the best representation of my human self that I can be. And that means absolutely enveloping my land and my property exactly the way I want it to be. My creation, my canvas. You know, and people up there that I love. These people are incredible people. Family to me. And I want to be with them. And if things go down that are challenging, as in some real global, you know, upheaval happens, If that's the timeline we are following, I want to be there. You know, there is nowhere else on the planet where I would want to exit the planet where I've entered. And as a kid, I couldn't think of any place else I would, I felt so hard done by that. I was born in the desert. But now, as an adult, I see what a blessing and how right I got that. And so a lot of you guys, you know, who are trying to figure out where you want to be, who you want to be around, don't ever, 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 take it from me, people of Earth, don't second guess your intuition. Choose your relationships right, even if it means distancing yourself from people that just do not serve, you know, your ideas, or they don't love you as hard as they should, or they don't treat you as good as they should. That's lazy. That's lazy. And if you are much more refined than that, you are allowed to step away. You don't have to make a big song and dance about it. You can just gradually pull yourself away. You're allowed to do that. You can choose who you want to be around, family or not, you can choose. This is a time of great symbiosis. And so finding the place, the people, your environment, your home, the way and in accordance of how you want to live is the most important. And it's not a selfish thing, because when everything around you starts feeling ideal, I shit you not, that reverberates out and influences people like you have no idea. People may drive past for 10 seconds and see your space incredible and be so affected by that they cannot get it out of their minds, and it may trigger something within them, and it has this reverberating effect, and it touches them in a way that perhaps you probably won't even or ever find out, or that you will never know about. So trust in your intuition. Know that you have so much unseen help, and there is a force engulfing you, within you, that is you. Trust in that. Just because everybody else lives a certain way doesn't mean you have to. And by golly, when people see my place and what I plan to do, universe is already giving me the visions of what I am going to create with Mother Earth on this space. I see it clear as day, and it's not going to be like anything people have seen. And I want to create that utopic place, even if I am the only one doing it. That's my reality here on planet Earth. Love you guys.